Hey everybody, welcome to Swedenborgian Life Live. Today we're going to look at the meaning of the gates to heaven and hell. Because in the Bible, they talk about not just the gates of heaven, the pearly gates, who hasn't heard about that?
That's right.
But also there's gates to hell. And what kind of God is setting up gates to everything? And why are we gating things in the spiritual world in the first place? What message does it send about how we should treat each other in this world?
Kind of strange.
Yeah. And by the way, thanks for hanging out. My name is Curtis Childs, and I'll be your host. We should probably introduce ourselves before we're too incredulous.
Okay.
Right? Because people aren't going to know where we're coming from. This is
I'll
Dr.
hold
Jonathan
a little
Rose,
bit of incredulity.
series editor of the New Century Edition translation
everybody.
of Swedenborg's theological works. And while you're here, if you've been enjoying this series, if this is your first time, skip this part. But if you're enjoying this series, please like and subscribe. This is a way for you to help us reach the rest of YouTube, and hopefully that's a lot of the world too. And enter your elevator pitch ideas in the chat. Anybody who's watching, new or seasoned, there's going to be something happening very spontaneously later in the show where you are going to be able to give us what's a topic, what's a piece of Swedenborg's worldview that you want us to just totally unprepared riff on for 60 seconds. Get them in now in the chat. We'll grab them and put them in, and you'll see it's real. So now, every single show, speaking of responsiveness, every single show that we do here in Swedenborgian Life Live is in response to something that you have asked. And so this question that we're basing this on came out of a full question and answer show. We had a program where we were just taking audience questions the whole time. We didn't have time to answer all those questions. And we got in this episode this question afterwards, which Ethan Miller was asking. What is the Swedenborgian interpretation of straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it? If we're equating life with heaven, this does seem to be an issue.
That's right. That's right. And I believe the passage mentions hell in there, so it seems pretty clear that life equals heaven in the sense of eternal life and that kind of thing.
So why are you going to, if you're God and you're supposed to be nice, you're supposed to be a kind, benevolent, omnipotent being, and heaven is supposed to be the greatest state anyone can achieve, eternal happiness, why would you make it hard to find?
That's right. That's right. And straight just doesn't mean it's kind of direct. It means it's same as narrow. It's crowded.
Yes.
The few people can even find it. So is it like God is making it difficult, kind of playing hide and seek, and then there's this huge entry to hell, so most people will just fall in there accidentally or something, and then there's a tiny little way to get to heaven. Is that what's going on?
That's inappropriate. The stakes are too high to play games like that. So let's see if we can't get in there, unpack what is the meaning, why are we talking about these gates, and how can that be relevant to all of our lives right now? And to begin with that relevance, let's ask ourselves the following icebreaker question. As we answer this here, we want all of you to answer it in the chat as well, because we're going to give an answer, but these are questions that don't have a definitive answer, and actually everyone can have a new layer of insight into this. That's and if you're watching in post, after, still in the comments, we'd love to know your answer to the icebreaker question. Those of you who leave it here during the live show, at the end of the show, we're going to display yours for the world to see. The world-ish. I mean, most of the world is watching this show.
Yeah.
So as we look at the gates to heaven and hell, we begin that journey by pondering this. How or where can we look for heaven while living on earth?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because you might think at first glance like you can't see heaven from earth. You just have to wait until after death or something. But part of what Swedenborg is saying is that heaven is all around us, it's within us, and we can find it if we look for it. So to me, some of those kind of characteristics that Swedenborg talks about, and we talk about a lot on this show, are kindness, justice, mercy, compassion, those kind of qualities. So when you see those either in your own heart or in an interaction between other people out there, you think, oh, heaven is active. Part of the deal is that heaven is kind of quiet a lot of the time. Don't you think? It's like it's not really noisy. That's not the way it rolls. It's often playing a long game. So it can take some looking to find it. But those are places that I look.
And you think about how do you tell heaven apart from, there's so many places where people might say, oh, I feel like I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven. This is heavenly. Usually we will use it for shorthand to just mean this is good. This is fun.
This feels good.
This feels good. I'm enjoying this.
This is something I want.
Yes, but what heaven, the core of heaven is its joy that is perpetually sustainable. This is something that is not going to wear itself out. It doesn't matter what nice new thing you buy. It will feel great. It will feel like heaven for a limited amount of time, and then it's not sparkling in the same way. What does last, and also you really know that something's not heaven if it's creating hell for other people. So
that's right.
Where I find it, Swedenborg says the core of what heaven is when you're excited about doing something that serves the greater good. So there are times when, and this can happen just as much at your job, when you really get the feeling of you actually aren't even thinking about what it does to your ranking in the hierarchy relative to other people or the material rewards you get, but you're just thinking about the actual impact. If you can get any kind of joy out of that, that's a little like quiet taste of what heaven is. And I think already we're starting to see that we're not talking about a location.
That's right, not a location. And what you're making me think of right now is that there's also an experience I've had that I'm sure everybody's had where I have a thought. Let's say I give something to somebody.
Yeah.
After I give it to them, my joy, my good feeling, like doubles.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
It's not a zero-sum game. You know, you hand it over and it increase. So that's partly where I look for heaven too, is that increase that happens sometimes.
Synergistic relationships that actually can be better for both of us through this interaction. And so all this stuff you're talking about, you don't have to be in Louisiana to have this happen or be in Ottawa.
It's not locational, is it? Yeah.
So that has implications for these gates that we're talking about. Because if spiritual things aren't necessarily delineated by placement, but by state, how can you have a gate over something? Right?
Yeah, so what is a gate to a state? What is a state gate?
What is a state gate? We'll find out in the next section. To begin, I guess we already began it. I mean, I guess the icebreaker's beginning, but we're beginning in earnest now. We're really getting into setting you up with the things we need to know to process the meaning of these two heavenly gates. And we want to start, we're not going to start in the Bible, you know, because some people think, well, I don't have anything to do with the Bible. We're going to start in some weird, obscure place like Emanuel Swedenborg's theological writings. Let's just start in common human experience.
Oh.
Why don't we do that?
Okay, that's unusual.
And we're going to describe a phenomenon that I think people will agree is everywhere. And one way you can tell something is everywhere is that it's all over the internet. Here's a couple of articles where we are seeing people express this notion that we see what we're looking for. So this is expressed in calmeryou.com. Once we have an idea about something and it takes root in our subconscious mind, our brain causes us to notice it more in our lives. The brain is constantly filtering information, helping us to notice certain things and ignore other things. Without this mental filtering, there would be far too many bits of information for us to cope with.
You'd be flooded.
The fact is we notice what we look for and not what is necessarily there. Like right there, I read an and in there, what we look for and not what is necessarily there, because I just thought that's how a sentence would go.
Yeah, right, but it wasn't actually there.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes against, like what we want to be the case is that our eyes just clearly perceive exactly what is in front of us.
Yes.
Our ears hear precisely what's going on. It's not about that we're filtering it or adjusting it in some way.
Yeah.
And so you can sort of think, oh no, I'm getting an absolutely accurate impression. But the fact is, you all, haven't you had the experience where you sit in a restaurant and you're looking at the menu and like one or two things on the menu just like look like they're written in twice as large a font as anything else? Because, I love that. I don't know what this is, but I love that.
Yep, absolutely. So, and this is not the only website who's pointing this out. We have another here. This is from Patheos or Patheos. I never know which one that is. I see what I want to see. I see what I am looking for. What am I looking for and why am I looking for it? There's comfort to familiarity, even if that thing we are familiar with is bad.
Oh.
The patterns of my life are constantly searching to validate themselves. It goes on. The door with certain predispositions, biases, and preferences. These perceptions feed on themselves, and I spend my day looking for evidence to validate and reinforce what I already know. In order to see more, I have to look for more. Isn't that, we say, like, you have your
really
little sort of news bubble, and you just get more and more an echo chamber around you of people who agree with you?
That's right. Yeah, and so it is very much the same sort of point, isn't it? And it's a very interesting idea that we already have something in our minds that we're looking for, that we expect to see. Sometimes this disrupts conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have an idea of what the other person's going to say. You think, oh, they're probably going to say something critical. And then anything they say will suddenly strike you as critical. Even though, no, I'm not really hearing what the other person's saying because I'm already having the conversation in my head.
Yeah. That's just not a very good point. But don't take that critically. Why? This was just recently, somebody I knew was telling me that they had to go talk to somebody at work, and they could tell, as soon as they started the conversation, the other person already knew, already had what they were going to say mapped out. There wasn't going to be any back and forth there.
No give and take.
Let's go, we have one more here. So this is, we see what we look for from stream.org. Our society is trained to look for things to complain about. It's easy to hone in on the problems because they're everywhere.
It's one of my favorite
It's almost as if we view our state of affairs as catastrophic.
I think that's
all
so
the time.
Funny. It's so true. It's just like in a constant rolling state of catastrophe. That's right.
No matter what. So let's train ourselves to look for the good in the world. Long we'll see the goodness everywhere. We won't be able to help it.
I like that idea, and it would be tough to turn that around. You know, like looking for something different than you've been looking for.
Yeah. Yep.
That would take some effort, wouldn't it?
So they were going a lot into the sort of almost spiritual sense of seeing and what we understand and how we interpret life. But even just looking around, you know, you can miss things. There was, again, an unverified anecdote from my life. We bought my daughter
Hasn't been independently attested.
We bought my daughter a trampoline for Christmas, and it's like an 8-foot trampoline with a net. It's pretty big and pretty visible. We had somebody come to our house, a friend of ours, and they walked right by it and didn't see it. It was nighttime, but there were lights on. This is just something you're not used to. You can miss just like that.
There's no trampoline in the yard. They're not looking for it.
Yeah, because why would they get that, right?
Right.
Aren't they more responsible? Isn't a trampoline dangerous? So that's how it feels. And there is some observational science that is backing up this stuff. So this is a psychological research article about it, or a composite from psychologytoday.com. Which talks about why we see what we want to see.
Okay.
A phenomenon called motivated perception has been explored in psychological research for decades. Indeed, the world as we conceive it in our awareness is not exactly an accurate representation of what it truly is.
I thought it was.
Yeah, what's up with that? Well, mine is. Our perception is often biased, selective, and malleable. Even our desires can affect what we see by impacting the way we process visual information.
Our desires, very interesting. Like your desires are looking out through your eyes and impacting what you're seeing.
And since you're just seeing what you want to see, to you, you may think we just had some kind of technical glitch that made us have to redo part of it and we were off the air for a few minutes. That's not true. You just wanted to see that, so you saw it. Okay, so let's now look and see that these earlier articles where it seems like it feels like we only see what we want to see. There's actual science
behind it
to back it up.
Right.
All right, so this is a quote from Psychology Today, which we're going to pull up here and now, but it's not on the screen in front of me. There it goes. It is to you. All of you saw it. I just couldn't see it for a second. All right, the troubled waters are behind us. A phenomenon called motivated perception has been explored in psychological research for decades.
I like the phrase motivated perception. I think that's really interesting.
That's
sort of like there's something driving your perception. It's not just
it's a little bit of
transparent.
A euphemism. Indeed, the world as we conceive it in our awareness is not exactly an accurate representation of what it truly is. Our perception is often biased, selective, and malleable. Even our desires can affect what we see by impacting the way we process visual information. Why are we prone to seeing what we want to see? Recent research published in Nature Human Behavior demonstrates how our motivations and desires can give rise to two biases: a perceptual bias, when our motivations have a top-down influence on our perceptions, and a response bias, when we report seeing what we wish to see. No, I got my trophy was first place. I remember it clearly. So
from both ends, you can impose your will on your perception.
if this is how the world works physically, it should be no surprise that Swedenborg reports this same thing happening on the spiritual side of life. This is from Secrets of Heaven 1017, where he talks a little bit about sort of spiritual, see what you want to see.
Yeah, okay.
In general, and spiritual being psychological here, in general, when the premise is wrong, only falsity can result from it, because everything conforms with the premise. As a matter of fact, those who confirm themselves in principles of this kind concerning faith alone,
one of his hobby horses.
What is it? In 4 seconds.
In 4 seconds, it's the idea that your beliefs save you regardless of your actions.
And who have no charity, right, none of those actions, lack any interest in the many things the Lord said, so often said about love and charity, they seem not even to see those statements.
So that's great. So what he's saying is the Bible is full of statements about you have to, it depends on the way you live, those who treat others well are saved, those who don't are not. It's all through. It's in the epistles, it's in the Gospels, it's in the Old Testament, and yet they don't hear that. They hear a statement from Ephesians about faith or something.
The other stuff might as well be a trampoline in the night that they walk right by.
That they just walk right. That's so beautiful.
It's interesting that actually that's one of the tamest ways in which this principle shows up spiritually. As we'll be digging into in the future of this episode, there's a lot of iterations of this. You only see what you want to see on the spiritual level. But this being selective about scriptural ideas is the first one. So
because you have preconceived ideas, so that's a bias or something.
Right.
You bring in,
So where's this quote from? First of all, let's get some context.
This is from the Sermon on the Mount, which is one of the better known parts of the Bible, Matthew 5 through 7. And Jesus is talking to a whole group of gathered people. He's on a mountain, he's talking to everybody. And so we can see that they're not talking about a gate that's hidden or exclusive. It's not like, I'm only going to let certain people into heaven, so I'm going to make it really difficult to find, and I'm going to keep everybody out.
Okay.
But instead, if you read this carefully, you'll see it's more about what people were interested in. What are they looking for? Right. How many people are looking for the heaven gate? How many are looking for the hell gate?
All right.
So here's Matthew chapter 7. Enter through the narrow gate. This is advice from Jesus.
Yeah.
For broad is the gate, and open the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who walk along it. Destruction there meaning hell.
Yeah.
Confined is the path, and narrow the gate that leads to life, and there are few who find it. And so to reiterate something we said earlier, the idea that life here means heaven and destruction means hell is not only something Swedenborg says, but a lot of Christianity views this passage that way.
That's right. It is a Swedenborgian correspondence. Life is heaven, but you don't get pushback from traditional Christians on that as well.
That's right.
Okay,
that's a very comfortable equation then.
In this quote, actually the width or the narrowness of these spiritual conditions you can end up in, heaven or hell, actually have to do with how many people are choosing that path rather than the state of some external path. Swedenborg wrote in Heaven and Hell 534, the way that leads to life is not narrow because it is difficult, but because so few people find it, as stated.
And if you go back, if you rewind and, what we said earlier, or look at that quote in Matthew chapter 7, it really does say that. There are few who find it, there are many who find it. So it's like any other path in this world, that if a lot of people walk in a certain part of a field, you get a wide path there. Yeah. And if only a few or just one deer goes through there occasionally, you'll get a very narrow path.
But what does find mean? Because isn't that still setting up just like the gates in the beginning? God has made the good way hard to find.
Like he's hiding it or something like that. Yeah, like it's really, really difficult, and that's frustrating. Well, Swedenborg would say find equals interested in. So like you're able to find something that the person maybe wasn't interested in trampolines or something. Like you see things that it's amazing sometimes if you, like two different people riding in a car, if one is interested in yard sales or
Yes, right.
trash picking or something
As
like
I
that.
am.
Yes, boom. They'll see stuff that the other person who's interested in birds or sunsets or something is seeing different things out of the car window.
So now we could take that and apply it to not something as serious as yard sales, but to something just like, heaven.
Salvation or something.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so people see and find what they're interested in looking for. Here's Divine Providence 250. People, he starts with a little bit of vinegar here at the beginning here. People who worship themselves and the material world, let's get it right out there.
Yeah. Guilty.
Think that rank and wealth are the highest possible joys. In other words, prestige, like rank,
It could be social rank.
Like could be social rank or just feeling superior to other people.
Yeah. When you feel, this is just, the only reason I'm happy now is because I know other people aren't getting this.
Right.
I get.
Or if you ever find yourself having to say, don't you know who I am?
Yeah.
That kind
which
of thing, right?
I certainly do.
Yes, that's right. Rank and wealth are the highest possible, so certain kind of people think that rank and wealth are the highest possible joys. In fact, Swedenborg amends his statement to say, the only possible joys. Joy itself is the very definition of joy, and there really can be nothing else. If they think at all about God because of their first childhood religion, in other words, maybe they grew up with some sort of exposure to religion, so they think about God, they call these things divine blessings. What does he mean by these things? Oh, they're talking about the wealth and the rank. So if you come from a religious background, but you're really fixated on this, then you say, oh, more money, like I had a really good year, that's such a blessing from God. That I'm highly favored, I'm in a good state. And as long as they have no higher aspirations than this, zing, like he's saying, actually that's not a very lofty, you may think, oh, I want to be the most important person in my,
Yeah, but that's not
my
actually...
my local, community garden group or something.
Yeah.
But no higher aspirations than this. They believe that God exists and worship him. But it's kind of a fair weather situation here. In fact, both in fair weather and foul, it seems to go badly. However, there's something hidden in their worship, meaning their regard for God, that they themselves do not know about. An assumption that God will keep raising them to higher honor and greater wealth. Like that's how you know you're blessed. You're going to keep the party going. If they do achieve this, okay, so let's say they get the desires of their heart. You think, well, surely they worship God and they're really excited about God. No, their worship tends more and more into superficiality until it drifts away. And eventually they trivialize and deny God. I think maybe quietly in their heart they thought, well, it wasn't really God. I mean, I succeeded, right? I mean, I kept succeeding.
Well, and it's a tried and true axiom that the easier things are going in your life, the less interested in God you are.
It's true.
It's like, I don't need that.
Super comfortable. You're not on your knees, praying to God.
Yeah.
And what about if, on the other hand, like let's say it goes badly and they lose the money or they lose respect or their position or something like that. Well, it says here, they do the same if they lose the respect and wealth on which they've set their hearts. It's not talking about just having any relationship to it, but that's really the primo, supreme kind of joy to you. In that case, what are rank and wealth but problems to these evil people? I like the way that he laid it out there to say, hey, let's say you get what you want. It's going to be a problem because you're going to stop worshiping God. Let's say you don't get it. You're going to be mad at God. You're going to lose your faith in either case. They're not, these things, rank and wealth, are not problems to the good because they do not set their hearts on them. Isn't there something in the Bible about that? They focus rather on the service or the good that respect and wealth can help them accomplish. Now you can see that wealth could help you, but actually when people respect you and listen to you, you're in a position to do them a kind of good that if they don't think you have anything to say, so both of those can be very helpful. The Lord tells us that there are many people who are loves for themselves and the world. Oh, he does. And few who are loves for God. When does he say that? Oh, when he says, wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in through it, but tight and narrow, a little bit different wording, it's great, is the way that leads to life, and there are few who find it.
So
he's brought it around to our passage.
If we're saying that placing love of your own dominion over other people and love of material gratification as the greatest things in your life, if that's a way to destruction. And if you think that is what joy, like what other joy are you talking about? Like the goodness is elevation in those things. You are not looking for this subtle, as you mentioned in the icebreaker question, the subtle joys of that like the good people he describes in this quote of using those things to be of service. It could be totally alien to think, what, you get rich just so that you can do good for people? Like, that's the point. But if you are strategizing your life in that way or aligning your life around that is looking for the narrow path. Because it's really easy, if you just break it down to an individual level, it's very easy to just get sucked in by ego-based stuff. But to try to look through that to the deeper, the spiritual joys, that's a narrow path. But the more people the more often we in our own lives and the more people in aggregate take the time to cultivate those little joys and actually fight against ourselves when necessary to make those things a priority, we are widening the path. We are making it so that eventually it could be that the path that leads to heaven is the big highway.
Is the wider one.
Okay.
Right. Cool.
So we're set up now. We've got the premise in our minds. We know basically what we're looking at with these gates. Now let's look at 3 concepts in that arena and see how they could apply. Okay, so let's see what we can learn about these gates. And it's Swedenborg, so you know this is coming at some point. And I think one of the pivotal lessons here is that there's these gates, and sure, you could talk about them as gates to heaven and hell, but there's 2 gates inside of each of us all the time. And it's these 2 gates within our psyche that really, this is where we're really interfacing with opening or shutting these things. So this is from Secrets of Heaven, 2851. As for the symbolism of a gate, there are 2 general kinds of gate in each of us. One lies open to hell and lets in the evil and falsity from there. Where did this stuff come from? Why am I constantly trying to clean out evil and falsity? Well, there's a gate. There's a gate into hell. In that gate stand hellish demons and spirits. The other lies open toward heaven and lets in the goodness and truth from there. In that gate stand angels. So there is a gate that leads to hell and a gate that leads to heaven. The gate to hell opens to people who wallow in evil and falsity.
So it may not be open, there may be stuff sort of leaking through, but it really opens if you make certain life choices.
Well, here you see the reverse, where the gate to heaven, and only through chinks all around them overhead does any light from heaven enter, because the gate to heaven is shut.
Right.
Enabling them to think and reason, which heaven is always going to give you those abilities, no matter what.
Awfully nice to them.
The gate to heaven, on the other hand, opens to people who devote themselves to the goodness and truth that come from there. There are 2 paths, and this is the path leading to the gate, that lead to a person's rational mind. A higher or more inward path, and that gives access to goodness and truth from the Lord. And a lower or more outward path through which evil and falsity sneak in from hell.
Sneak in. Yeah.
The rational
like the
mind,
difference between give access and sneak in.
Yeah, right.
It sort of shows you the different motivations there.
The rational mind itself lies at the meeting point of the 2 paths. Isn't rationality? Isn't that there's a Latin root there that means we're at the intersection of choice?
Yeah, that's right. 2 words come to mind. One is that the word underlying rationality has that idea of ratio in it, like you compare and contrast, And the word intellect, which is also involved in that, means literally to choose between. Lectus is choose and inter is between. So it's the thing that's choosing between things. So that's very much the idea of this rational mind that we all have.
Well, and there's this huge shift in perspective on your consciousness that Swedenborg provides, where we go from, here's my field of consciousness, and wow, I came up with that really bad idea, and I came up with this good one, great. That actually what we are is, there's a draft coming in from heaven and from hell, and what we are tasked with doing is seeing and identifying which one we're going to accept and act on and metabolize. To turn to specifics, the gate of your foes in the Bible is the gate we have in our earthly minds.
Yeah, there's certain passages that talk about your enemies will stand in the gate or things like this.
That's right. Why is there all these gates coming up?
There's all these gates.
And hasn't that gone out of style? Gates are not that relevant to 21st century society.
That's right.
But they're all over the Bible, so did we just pass that behind? No, there's an eternal meaning of gate.
Yeah, that's right.
When we are thoroughly earthbound, when we have not been reborn, evil and falsity occupy this gate. Another way to put it is that evil demons and spirits stream in through this gate with all their evil cravings and false convictions. When we become spiritual, though, or in other words, when we are being reborn, evil and falsity, or evil demons and spirits, it's just a person who's been overtaken by these ideas, are driven from that gate or from that part of our minds.
Amazing.
Once they have been driven off, goodness and truth or neighborly love and faith take over. This happens to each of us individually when we are being reborn, and likewise to anyone who enters the Lord's kingdom in the next life. It also happens to people in general, or in other words, to the church, which is composed of many people.
So you can go through this collectively as well as individually.
Yeah. This shows clearly that the gate of heaven is the place where angels live in us. That is, where goodness and truth coming from the Lord touch us.
Wow.
And it's one and the same. There are two gates then, as noted above. It's one and the same. There's heaven and hell, and those intersect in each of us in a different way. And we're walking the path right now. We can choose which path today am I walking. Am I walking through the hell gate? And am I walking through the heaven gate? Which one am I opening up?
Even minute by minute, it's like, which one am I trampling? Am I trampling toward this gate? Am I am I making the way narrow or wide by the choices that it's so typical of Swedenborg to bring it that close to home.
And to try to balance this ratio or shift it to be more of this bright, shiny gate, that is the process of rebirth. He talked in there about rebirth or regeneration. If you think, hey, I want more than generic, like be good, don't be bad on how to do this regeneration thing, we have myriad shows about that. We have a show about repentance, which is called Repentance, How to Be in Heaven Now. There's a little path for you right there. We also have a show called Regeneration, How Radical Love is Born. This is the process of being reborn. And also the day-to-day process of our salvation. We get really into these two gates. You see those are the two gates right there.
There they are. They're right there.
Can't believe it. Okay, so there's one seed. The gates, the real gates that we're talking about, sure, God is talking about what happens in heaven and hell on a large scale. Really where it matters is inside of us, and that's what matters today.
That's right. And an interesting thing about the way that Swedenborg describes the spiritual world is that the features of our minds and hearts become externalized in the spiritual world. So in the afterlife, after we pass on, we will actually see gates, not because they're physical gates, but because they're that same thing that we've been dealing with in this world.
Yeah.
And so this can manifest. We can actually see them. We can even see them about other people. We can see what path they're on and things like that. He talks about this in Heaven and Hell 5:34. I was once shown the way to heaven and the way to hell. Okay, we got story time here.
Yeah,
this is something that Swedenborg saw in a kind of a vision or an experience of the spiritual world, how this manifests. There was a broad path. Oh, interesting. It was broad, okay, leading off to the left or north. And the directions in the spiritual world are meaningful. There seem to be a great many spirits traveling along it. And spirits are just people who've passed on. They still have physical bodies and everything, and they're walking along this path.
Right.
In the distance, though, I could see a fairly large boulder where the broad path ended. Then two paths led off from the boulder, one to the left and the other on the other side to the right. So they went off in opposite directions after this boulder. The path to the left, wonder why we're reading this tonight.
Sure.
Path to the left was narrow and confined, leading around through the west to the south and therefore into the light of heaven. South is good. It's closer to the warmth and sun and so forth.
Equator, yeah.
The path to the right was broad and open, leading obliquely down toward hell. At first, everyone was clearly following the same path. Everybody all together, they're all following the same path as far as the large boulder at the fork. But at that point, they parted company. The good turned to the left and started along the confined path that led to heaven. The evil did not even see hello, what were they interested in? They didn't even see the boulder at the fork, but fell over it and hurt themselves. Okay, I'm not laughing about their,
I don't know how literal this story is. Like he's obviously summarizing. It's almost like a little parable, So.
Yes, right. It is kind of a vision of what's going on. When they got up, they rushed along the broad path to the right that led toward hell. Later, the meaning of all this was explained to me. It's interesting that he didn't see the meaning of it right away.
Yeah.
He's just seeing all this go on. The first path, the broad one, where so many good and evil people were traveling together, chatting with each other like friends, with no visible difference between them, pictured people who lived similarly honest and fair outward lives, with no visible difference between them. So these are people shuffling through their lives, and everybody looks like they're on the same path. There's only one path.
And isn't that the frustration of, you don't know if this person you're talking to is trying to scam you, or if you can trust them, or
right.
But that's because everybody wants to look trustworthy, regardless of whether they are or not.
And you're all just on the path together. No separation has happened. And then the stone at the fork or corner where the evil people stumbled, from which they rushed along the path to hell, pictured divine truth. Very interesting. So there's a depiction of divine truth, which is denied by people who are focusing on hell. In the highest sense, this stone meant the Lord's divine human nature. And man, it makes me think of the stone, the stone that the builders rejected has become the head of the corner, and other quotes about the stone, or the stone in Daniel 2 that becomes a great mountain and fills the whole earth. And so why, in the symbolism, why they stumble at that is that if they can't really, God is not a human, like Jesus is not divine or something, then they stumble over that.
Yeah, the idea of a loving, wise, conscious human consciousness, human-esque consciousness running things versus it's just cold and nothing, or
right. And that actually cares about you, has a sense of humor and so on. Yeah, right. Too much, and they stumble over that. However, people who acknowledge divine truth and the divine nature of the Lord as well were taken along the path that led to heaven. Paths in the other life picture or depict the thoughts that flow from our aims or intentions. Interesting. So when you're on a certain path, it's like, here's where I'm going. This is where I want to go.
When we're on that bad, like we mentioned before, oh, he's on the wrong path.
Yeah.
That's because we're saying his intention is to go get into trouble.
He's headed in a bad direction. Yeah, that's not going to turn out well. The paths that are presented to view there in the other world answer exactly to the thoughts of our aims. Very interesting. So they manifest as these pathways, and our course follows the thoughts that flow from our aims. This is why you can tell the quality of spirits and of their thoughts from their paths. So in that world, you can actually make a judgment based on, oh, look, they're on that path. What can I tell you?
Yes.
That's not going anywhere good.
Because the path is a motivational commitment. This is, if you see somebody walking on a path spiritually, that is a representation of what they love. Whereas here, I could be walking on this path because I thought I was supposed to go on a different path and got lost, or my GPS.
You can be confused. Yeah, that's right. Your GPS can be confused.
That's the difference, that you can know morality from appearances in the spiritual world because things manifest there.
It's an honest world. That's right.
So,
and that aims, like you have an aim, you have a goal, and then you have certain thoughts or plans of, okay, I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll try that. And there's your path. It's leading you on. It's a very interesting thought to me.
And this principle that we started with all the way in the beginning, of people see what they want to see, can manifest actually much more vividly in the spiritual world, almost to where what you're interested in changes the surroundings. This is from Secrets of Heaven 3477. I said that representations are constantly appearing in the heavens and that they involve wisdom's deepest secrets. The ones that people on earth are able to see in the word's literal meaning are as meager by comparison as the water of the ocean is to the water of a tiny pond. And we had this just a moment ago. Swedenborg said he was seeing these people walk this path as just something that occurred in front of him, whereas we are poring over and over these phrases. What did Jesus mean by these paths? There, that kind of stuff is just a part of life. You're swimming in it.
So visible.
What the representations appearing in the heavens are like can be seen from a number of earlier eyewitness reports, and also from the following. As I watched, this is in the spiritual world, several individuals were presented with a portrayal of the broad way and the narrow way mentioned in the Word. The broad way leading to hell and the narrow way to heaven. So somehow, like here you would see, okay, somebody made a movie about this. They are seeing this created representation of it. The broad way was planted with trees, flowers, and other lovely plants that looked lovely and pleasant, or other plants that looked lovely and pleasant on the outside, but hidden among them lay different kinds of snakes and serpents, which they did not see.
And there's nothing about that in the Bible, or not in that particular story.
Yes.
It doesn't say, oh, it looks great, but there's actually snakes in there. And the movie people sort of put those details in.
Yes. The narrow way was not as visibly beautified with trees and flower beds, instead appearing austere and dark. But
I feel you.
Along it were little angel children, beautifully decked out in the most charming possible parks and gardens, although these too they did not see. So if you back up and think about this as a state of mind, when we're looking at the broad way, there's stuff that seems great, but it's got these snakes in it, which is just like when you're going to go into these negative directions that harm yourself and harm others. It looks like, oh, look at this joy that I get out of this. This is working great. Yeah. You don't see the poison that's in there.
But it's harmful, yeah.
The harm it's doing to you, the harm it's doing to others. Whereas the narrow way looks, that looks kind of stiff and boring, but you don't see the
right.
joyful innocence in it.
Yes, that's right. It looks joyless. It looks dark. Austere is a great word.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be deprived of this, and I'm going to be, not have that.
They were then asked which way they wanted to go, which is what the whole human race is asked. And this boils down to
life asks you, which way do you want to go?
Every situation, it's generally, okay, we've got to work here, make sure that chaos doesn't break out here, or that when then things get economically depressed, we don't start turning on each other, or when there's an opportunity to seize power, it's always trying to keep that love of self and love of dominion back. But love of dominion is sitting there saying, look at how great this is going to be, and we're always being asked, which way do you want to go?
Yeah.
They said the broad way, but immediately their eyes were opened and they saw snakes on the wide path, but angels on the narrow. Then they were asked again which way they wanted to go, and this time...
let me try that again.
Yeah.
Which way do you want to go?
And this time they silently hesitated. The more open their sight was, the more they said they wanted to go the narrow way, but the more closed it was, the more they said they wanted to go the broad way. All this leading back to, if we only see what we pay attention to, our paying attention to and seeking out what is right, and people have such different ideas of it, but at least going for what you believe is right, that is the difference between finding the narrow path and not finding it.
Yeah, and that passage just adds a whole nother layer to this entire thing that we've been talking about, in the sense that it's even how the way looks to you in certain states, and in other states you realize, oh no, that's bad. So the same thing can look good or bad to you depending on whether your mind is elevated or not. There's a lot of depth in there.
Well, it's changed for me. I think 20 years ago, 18 years ago, the paths look very different to me.
You're over 18?
I am 18 and a half now.
Okay. Yeah.
The paths look very different, and their appeal was very different. There are things now that I don't want at all that I used to want all the time.
Isn't that true? Yeah.
And things that I would be, like if I get socks for Christmas, I love them. And I'm like, I really need these.
When you're a kid, it's like a rip-off. Yeah.
So that's a stupid example, but there's all kinds of other instances of the same principle.
No, it's really true.
Where you start to see the benefits of taking care of the things that are meaningful. So I think it does change.
Liking order or things like that, that just feel better as you go along.
So let's see now, we've got a lot of ideas and concepts swimming around in there. Let's see if we can let them settle and maybe expand on them emotionally through a little bit of meditation. So if we're thinking about choosing to look for heaven during earthly life, which is what I was trying to get at, is where is the opportunity to walk the narrow path?
Right.
When we focus on something that's genuinely good and true, whatever that is in your life, you're getting a glimpse of the gate to heaven. So think about whenever any situation where you feel like, I know this is something that I believe is ethical and that I'm proud of this thing and of participating in it, that's a little gate to heaven. So let's just look at some gates. Just think about all the gates you've actually interfaced with in life and think of them as a symbol for taking this journey. If you think about, sure, gates don't play a huge role in life, but when you need to interact with one, you know the feeling of that. You look at those images of this expansive field out there that you want to go into, but I've got to figure out, is this gate, how do you unlatch it? How do you swing it open? Oh, is it kind of rusted shut? And that's the same thing when we are considering these particular actions, this particular move into that way of life. That's the gate. That's what's knowing if you can get through into that, you can get to the full experience. That's cool. I love just taking ideas and putting them to images like that.
That's great.
So in the broad stroke, what have we been talking about this whole time? I mean, what's your takeaway for this whole journey that we've been on here now that we're approaching the end of it?
It's a great question. It's sort of a complex journey, but I guess what I think of is that it's amazing how you could look through a certain lens and say this Bible story is about God playing hard to get or something.
Yeah.
Hiding heaven, doesn't want you to get in there or something. And then you find out, oh no, it's not that. It's about choices that we make. And really part of God's love is that our choices are supported either way. A lot of people want to go this way. Okay, that path will be larger. But then to me, the amazing part of it is when it shifts to the fact that all of us have two gates, both gates, inside us all the time. So it's not like, oh, this is something that you wait until you die and then just choose this one. Just be sure to keep to the left. After you die, just remember that, keep to the left. No, it's there are two gates in us right now. And from moment to moment, we can be trampling toward the one gate or toward, like making our own path. Like how much do we go over toward this one to keep thinking of it from a higher perspective or getting sucked into this or whatever,
Yeah.
So I love that. I just, it's so typical of like, oh, it hits a little too close to home when you really see what it's about.
Well, and I think that's even just a more ethical feeling take, because if you say, oh, we're being taught about these people who are doing it wrong and these people who are doing it right, you can get this pushback. I get this pushback in my head of, oh, this is just classic religious stuff, separating people out and judging people.
Superiority.
But when you're saying, look, there's two gates in us, and let's find ways to work towards the good one. To me, it just feels like, oh, that's legit. That's a legit.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with practicing trying to feed the good wolf, as they say. Yeah. So, great. Thank you for the takeaway. And as your reward for us and for everyone at home, we're now going to struggle mightily to answer your questions. It's time for Elevator Pitch. Okay. Hopefully everyone's got their topics in by now. I'm sure we've got at least two. Thank you everyone every week for doing that, for pitching in. It's now time for the elevator pitch. That's right. New look, new vibe.
That's right.
Same confusion.
Yes.
New energy.
Same challenging task.
But
new graphics.
We've stepped onto an elevator. We have places to go. I noticed Jonathan over there, and I say, hey, is that Jonathan Rose from that show? That online show about weird things on the internet? Well, okay, I do have a question about a Swedenborg thing for you, okay? I only have 60 seconds because I'm going somewhere. Will you explain, not just explain the concept to me, but why it matters to me, okay? And your concept today is going to be hellish interference.
Ooh.
This is from Pete Dawson.
Okay.
Yeah, what was that thing? So what's really the deal with hell interfering with things? So here we go. I'm about to step onto the elevator in 3.
Okay. They were researching wolves a while ago, and they realized that actually the wolf population was helping the caribou because they would pick off the weaker, you know what I mean? They were actually strengthening the herd by taking care of diseased animals and so on. And so it gave them a different view of what, they're not just predators or whatever, but people came to a different view. The way the Lord sees evil spirits is that they are useful and that he allows a certain degree of hellish interference into our minds, like those wolves, like the Amalekites in the Old Testament who are harassing the children of Israel as they go through. We can actually be blessed. The Psalm says that he prepares a table before us in the presence of our enemies. So the Lord only allows as much as will bless us and can make us better people, more compassionate, more well-rounded.
Okay, I'll stay on the elevator with you for a second
Okay.
here. Because what an amazing, that's a great job, a great summary of it, and I love the tie-in with the wolves in the ecosystem, because that I would say is a correspondence. He talks often about how hell is like the fiercer forces we see out in the wilderness, and
not that wolves are hellish, but it's just an analogy,
No.
isn't it? That just there's a way that it works. So.
but they're performing the same function in the ecosystem. And
Right.
this is God doing something with you. You've got this radioactive waste, which is people who are driven by a desire to harm other people. How do you take that and recycle it and use it for something good?
Wow.
It's just as you described.
Right.
So pretty awesome. All right.
Well put.
So let's now, to return the favor, let's say it's the end of the day, we're going down in the elevator, and for some reason now he's going to ask me a question. The thing breaks down. Okay, so mine is going to be, is God in everything living and inanimate? Okay, let's do it. Everything has to go back to an original source. Everything is a thing that exists within reality. So there's God in everything. But that doesn't really mean anything, especially when we're trying to live a life and struggle with, am I valuable? Is life going anywhere? Is anything going good? What does it mean for God to be in everything living and everything inanimate? You look for the use that it performs. I was talking earlier to someone on this very elevator about wolves, and he was saying, look, the wolf is doing something good. There's something good coming out of it. Look at all the substances around you. Look at the way that water, sure, water's not God, you can drown in water, but if you really see the way water can clean you and can hydrate you, you can see in this inanimate substance love. And if you look at the way we can interact with animals, or the way certain plants can make you healthy, you know, and provide you with sustenance and all that, there you're seeing the God in the things. Sure, God is providing the means by which things exist, but God is really present in things when they can express using love. Okay, a couple extra seconds there. But
Right.
Good. Okay, so everyone, hopefully you're convinced.
And I finished my working day, so I had time for it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you're still calling your Uber. Oh, you don't call an Uber. Okay, listen, guys. That was fun. Thank you so much. And now...
Good questions, gosh.
Good questions indeed. This is what we love hearing from you. And we're going to hear from you some more. We're going to do our ice melter, see what your responses were. But first, we want to let you know how you can help this show happen. We're a not-for-profit organization, so this is all happening because people are donating because they feel like this kind of ideas, these kind of ideas, this kind of teaching is worth supporting. Here's how you can do the very same thing.
Please consider joining our community of sustaining supporters by going to otle.causevox.com and setting up a recurring monthly donation at a value of your choice. Any amount helps. Our sustaining supporters are the backbone of what we do at Off the Left Eye and allow us to continue to create high-quality programming that nourishes thousands every week around the globe. Your help makes a difference.
Okay, so we said we would do the ice melter, and now we will. If you remember, this was way back in the very... Just like I promised we were going to do that. I told you we were going to do the ice melter. So here is, if you remember, the question that prompted it all. How or where can we look for heaven while living on earth? And this is what all of you had to say about it. So we begin in our hearts. It's a state. It's not a place. In how we treat others, and that's an active state. It's everywhere. It's how we look at things, our mental state of love or fear. Right? You can have the heaven or hell in the very same situation. Looking inside when I'm balanced and harmonious with surroundings, then I feel like I'm in heaven.
Nice.
I think heaven is what calms the storm. Yeah, that's great.
We can look for heaven in right relationships.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's very good. I look for heaven in the opportunities to give love unconditionally. Those opportunities.
Right.
Reaching inside to partner with God, to focus on what God is giving and asking you today to do for others, and being childlike in trusting that process.
Swedenborg wrote, things turn out best when I cast my cares on the Lord like a little child. In his journal.
Nice.
Right.
Look at that. We can see heaven by noticing goodness from surroundings and from ourselves, such as strangers' friendly smiles. It's such a nice thing, isn't it? And the good decisions we make and beautiful natural senses we used to take for granted.
You want to keep some of those in the holster. Like, remember positive interactions with strangers, because when you're thinking, oh, life is gray and nothing and everyone's evil. No, they're not. You just got to keep that in there. Okay, and then finally, I see heaven from helping my mother when needed and from holding my sister's carer's 6-week-old baby. Cute. We can experience a glimpse of heaven by moments of joy or peace, particularly when it's shared with another.
That's true, yeah.
I never really tried to look for heaven here on earth, but I'm always open to the moments when it finds me.
I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come to you.
Definitely,
Nice.
I will be in a rut of a state where I'm just having low-end ideas and looking from a very limited perspective, and then suddenly I'm up and I'm thinking much better things and feeling much better, and I'm slowly trying to be like, okay, so I didn't just come up with that. Like, I've suddenly been whisked up into something.
That's right.
So that's great. Well, thank you for taking the time to reach into what your actual life experience is and finding the things that correspond with the ideas we're talking about here. They should be tools that do not replace our life experience or do not make it obsolete, but bolster it and help us navigate it. So we love seeing that here.
And I love the variety, but also the kind of unanimity in the answer.
Right.
Like there's a great kind of rainbow of colors in there or something. It's really neat.
Thank you all. Hey, not that we're going to ask you a favor now after getting so much from you already. Okay, fine. Like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. Doesn't hurt, helps us out. And
it really does.
As a thank you, we're going to keep doing content because we're assuming that's why you're here, because you enjoyed the content, and we're going to keep at it this week. We have our show News from Heaven, 2 days this week, Thursday and Saturday. On Thursday, we're going to talk about how angels don't take the Bible literally. So what we were doing here, looking into the deeper meaning and getting to something that goes from this description of a strange gated community in the afterlife to something that helps us every day. Do angels do that, and how so? And then on Saturday, the way spirits talk and how it varies. So
interesting.
And then we do our short clips. We poll you all and ask, what do you think you'd want to do? Oh yeah, good question is coming up next Monday. And then, so that's a full question and answer show. And then we're going to go to
this is very exciting.
Our show, Will Your Body Look the Same When You Die? The second in our new series of Swedenborgian Life. Maybe you caught the first one. It's pretty exciting stuff.
This new season is very exciting.
Short clips Wednesday and Friday, as I was saying, how our goal, Wednesday, it's how goals unite or divide people. Friday, what's the opposite of temptation? It's all to say, we love that you want to talk this through with us, and we're happy to do that more than you can handle throughout the week. So
such a joy.
Hopefully,
such a joy for us.
In the end, you're taking something you learned here, and it's helping. It's helping you. It's helping someone else. And thanks, Jonathan Rose, for hanging out.
So fun, Curtis.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Oregon Life Live is Curtis Childs, host and showrunner, with co-host Jonathan Rose. Live stream tech and graphics by Stuart Farmer and Matthew Childs. Show writing and chat moderation, Karin Childs and Chelsea Odner.